We must constantly look at things in a different way.
The Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast was created by two physical therapists out of the desire to learn more about the different educational roles in physical therapy and healthcare, and how healthcare education works by talking with educational leaders and people with different perspectives within physical therapy and across interdisciplinary lines on how education can be improved to disrupt the status quo of healthcare education. This is our journey, and thanks for listening. Are you a third-year physical therapy student that excels on tests when you have study guides, checklists, and deadlines? With all of the information available about how to prepare for the NPTE, it's easy to get disorganized and not feel prepared going into the big day. NPTE Prep Success is an online course that provides PT students easy-to-use study guides and step-by-step guidance through the NPTE preparation. To learn more, visit kylericeprep.com. Thank you again all for your continued support. And now for the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Dr. F. Scott Field, joined with another one of our hosts, Stephanie Weyrauch, and we are here live at APTA PPS meeting up in Dallas, Texas. Steph, great to see you again.
Oh my gosh, Scott, it's been way too long. I miss you guys. I'm sorry I haven't been co-hosting any HET podcast episodes. A lot's been going on in my life.
I was going to say there's a reason for that, many reasons. So let's talk about some of the life changes you've had in the last couple of months. What's been going on in your life?
Well, probably the biggest news I have is I'm now a new mom.
Yes. Congratulations.
Gave birth to my daughter, Sarah, in January. And I think actually the last podcast episode that I did was I co-hosted or guest hosted Karen Litzy's podcast, Healthy, Wealthy, and Smart, on an interview that I did. I had written an article for PPS Impact, private practice section of the APTA. It's their magazine that they put out. And I wrote an article on burnout in physical therapy. And so as I was trying to figure out the perspective I was going to take from this article, because I had a different idea of where I was going to go. But, with all the journalism that I do, or, journalism light, I guess you could say that I do, I think it's really important to do a lot of in-depth research and to find good sources to back up what you write about. And so I delved into the research of burnout in physical therapy and found out that all the literature that's available is 20 years old or older. And most of it, if it's more recent, is more anecdotal than actual data-driven. And one of the actual more recent studies that I found was from Dr. Ellen Zambo-Anderson, who's out of Rutgers, and she had done her dissertation on stress and physical therapy and looked at burnout in physical therapists. And what she found was that how we define burnout is actually not in line with how the literature defines burnout. And so as I was kind of reading through her dissertation, I was like, man, I need to interview this person for my article so that I can really get a good grasp. I mean, this was at the height of COVID.
Sure.
I was pregnant at the time. I didn't know if I was going to be laid off from my job. I didn't know what to expect as a pregnant person with a baby on the way, how my baby would be affected by COVID.
Yeah.
So, I was stressed for sure. Yeah. So I talked to her, interviewed her for Karen's podcast, and learned a lot. And based on what she told me, I was able to write this article for Impact, which, here at PPS, we've been talking, the keynote this morning was on resilience. And I've always hated the word resilience. I think that it's too much of a buzzword, and I don't think we've really defined resilience in the way that it is actually defined. And how I think of resilience, because my husband is a medical resident in pathology, is that it's a responsibility that's put on an individual where, you need to exercise, you need to do all these things in order to keep your sanity. Well, when you're a medical resident and you're working 100 hours a week, how are you supposed to exercise? Right. How are you supposed to spend time with your family? How are you supposed to do any of these things that they define in resilience, as resilience to, be sane?
Right.
And I think that really falls in line well with physical therapists, especially at the height of COVID.
Yeah.
Is, we were asking ourselves, how can we be resilient? How can we practice being resilient? I think resilience is something that employers and leaders need to encourage in their employees in the culture that they create. So instead of saying, oh, maybe you seem stressed, maybe you need to exercise more. Well, maybe as a leader, you need to give a person a little bit more time off.
Right.
Or pay them a little bit more so they don't have these stressors, which I know that there's a lot of factors that go into these. I mean, being very superficial with what I'm saying. So if you want to delve more into it, you can read my impact article.
Yes.
But that's basically the argument that I make in this article, is that, it presents these issues with how we define burnout in physical therapy. It better defines what burnout is made up of, and it also helps leaders implement realistic solutions within their practice that aren't so burdensome to people facing stress. Because if we have happy workers, we're going to have happy patients.
Right. We're not in that zombie workforce anymore.
Yes. So that was like the last big major project that I did prior to giving birth to Zara. She was born on January 14th. And so I went on maternity leave. My employer has been very supportive of me, and I was able to take a 4-month maternity leave. While on that maternity leave, I worked with you creating some content of the SI joint, which we were able to teach to, beta students from Paul Go's company. And so that did take up a lot of my time. Luckily with a newborn, I thought that I would be a lot less busy with a newborn, which I was not. And I know that you warned me about that, but it never, you never really think.
Right, till you're in it.
Till you're in it, you never really understand it. So, but I was able to get it done. She slept. When she slept, I worked on these talks. I was able to lecture to the students. It was a really great experience. It was another one of those things where I was like, wow, I can still be in touch with my career, yet be a mom.
Yeah.
And I think I was able to do them both fairly well.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so I really enjoyed my maternity leave. I went back and visited my family at the end of May. That was kind of the last hurrah before I went back to work in North Dakota, and got to introduce Zara to our family. So that was really nice. And then I started back at work in the end of May, beginning of June. And I, came back and I was ready to go. And then I realized as I was working at the private practice that I'm at, I was like, wow, I'm working 8:30 to 5, which were my new hours. And Zara goes to bed at 6:30.
Yeah.
And wakes up at 6:30. I'm literally spending 2 hours a day with her, and I'm grinding my ass at work.
Yeah.
And I'm not spending any time with my child. This is not. I was watching the clock more at work. I wasn't as happy at work. So a lot of these red flags that I mentioned that lead to burnout in this article. I was thinking about this. And I was like, man, this is really hard. And so my boss came up to me, checked in with me about a month after I started working. And he's a dad of 2 young kids. Yeah. And he's like, Stephanie, how are you doing? And just that open-ended question was I'm not really doing that great. And I explained to him, what I just mentioned, that it was crazy to me to think that I was spending 2 hours with my child and then spending the rest of the time at work. And I just was noticing, and I've never been somebody to watch the clock at work because I'm extremely passionate about this profession and I love what I do. And I was like, this is not me.
Right. But it's an emotional time. It's amazing how things change after a child.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And when we were pre all this happening, before I went, it was even thinking about maternity leave, my boss had asked me are you going to come back full time? And I was like, well, duh.
Obviously.
Why wouldn't I? And I'm so dedicated to this profession. And so, he asked me this open-ended question of how are you doing? And I was like, I'm not really doing that great. I notice I'm watching the clock more. I don't want to really be at work. And it's not anything that you're doing. No. It's just I feel
situations.
Yeah, I feel I'm really missing out on, because the advice I get from everyone is, enjoy those days when they're young, when they're babies like this, because the snuggles only last so long. And I don't feel I'm able to take advantage of that advice.
Yeah.
And he's like, I get it. He's like, I'm a dad of young kids and they are only young once. And he's like, if you want to reduce your work hours, I am totally supportive of it. You just tell me what you need and I will make it happen.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And so I'm now working 32 hours a week.
Great.
I have Mondays off, so I have a 3-day weekend, and that one day of staying home with Zara has made a complete difference in my quality of life. I feel like I'm able to get good quality time with her. I feel like I'm present at work and I'm excited to go to work. And so, that was kind of the next big, change in my life that I made. And every mom I think has, and dad probably have that conflicting thought of, how do I find that, and I hate this term, but like that balance, right?
Work-life balance.
Yep. And, having a supportive leader in my company and having a boss that really understands and really asks these open-ended questions to really understand what's important to his employees makes all the difference in how happy I've been at work. So now I'm working 4 days a week.
And transitioning now from one elected position to another, right?
Yeah, so we're here at PPS. Today, this weekend will be my last weekend as the chair of the private practice section nominating committee. So if you're not familiar with the nominating committee, we are the leadership pipeline in PPS. So we try to develop leaders that eventually want to be in leadership. So for example, the board of directors, the nominating committee for private practice, so that we can continue to transform society, so that we are really making sure we're providing our practitioners, our staff, and our patients with the kind of care and the kind of things that they need.
Yeah.
And
I think the private practice section does a great job of providing those leaders and the tools we need to become leaders eventually. So kudos to you for that. Now the next position.
Yeah, so, while I was making this transition from working 5 days a week to 4 days a week, I was also running for the American Physical Therapy Association nominating committee. So it's basically PPS nominating committee, the job that I do here at a bigger scale is what it is. Developing the next leaders of APTA. And, it was pretty intense. It was pretty intense process. It was all virtual this year, which is great because it removes so many barriers that people have for running for leadership positions. So a lot of my time when Zara was asleep at night was spent being interviewed by delegates of different states, different aspects of APTA, and answering their questions about why I think that I would have been the best person for the nominating committee. And I think I did probably 15 to 20 interviews, so it was busy, and they varied from 15 minutes to an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So, it was very busy. The election took place in August, and I got elected, which I'm very excited about.
We're excited as well.
Especially because I think, as we move through seasons of life, as you know, Scott, as we move through seasons of life, the needs that we have change. And I think that it's hard for especially young women, but I'm sure, new dads as well. Like, I want to stay involved in APTA or in my profession, but I have all these other things tugging at me.
Right.
And I never, prior to a few years ago, I had never seen a child at a conference. And so I never really thought it was a feasible goal for somebody to be a parent of a young child and to be fully engaged in APTA until I went to the Graham Sessions one year, which is a conference that private practice also hosts.
Right.
And saw one of my colleagues who's extremely involved in private practice section, an amazing private practice owner, just a wonderful leader. She was at the time the editor of the Impact magazine board. She was there with her infant son, and just seeing her, this was way before I ever thought I was going to have kids, just seeing her there playing, like, with her newborn, I was like, oh my God, if she as a single parent can be at this conference with a child, a newborn, like, I could do that someday.
Inspiring. Definitely something to look up to.
And so that's one of the reasons that I ran for APTA nominating committee is, we talk about diversity, we talk about inclusion in our association. And I think that that's a huge branch of our association that doesn't feel like they have a place that they can be is parents.
Yeah.
And I think that I felt like I could represent them in this position.
Yeah. Well, and Zara will be ready for all the conferences that come her way when she's ready to do your thing you're doing. So
Exactly.
That's great. She's learning early.
Well, she's here at this conference with me.
Making the rounds. I've seen her.
Thank you, my mom, for coming and babysitting while I'm in sessions. And, she went to House of Delegates with me as well. And my husband went with and was able to watch her when I was busy. And so, it really does take a tribe. And, it's not, I know that this isn't for everyone. Not everybody wants to or has the energy to put their time into maybe the association. They want to put their time somewhere else. Right. And that's totally valid. But for me, this was the right decision. And I want people to see, like, if you see somebody who looks like you, who's in the same season of life as you, doing something that you didn't think was possible, even that little opportunity, it's like with our patients, even that little glimpse of hope is really inspiring, and it gives you enough to grab onto to be like, well, maybe I can do this. And so ultimately that takes us up to, September. And now here I am at PPS. In the meantime, my husband and I presented at the American Congress.
That was very cool.
American Congress of Rehabilitation Medicine Conference, which is an interdisciplinary conference for people in rehab medicine. So physicians, PAs, SLPs, OTs, PTs, athletic trainers. Very interdisciplinary. And we presented a talk on heart disease and managing patients with heart disease and trying to prevent the progression of heart disease. So basically, my husband, he's a pathologist. He's going to be training and starting a fellowship in forensic pathology. And he's very passionate about the heart. He loves the heart. And, he talked about the pathophysiological mechanisms that develop in people with risk factors for heart disease. And so he talks about this continuum that exists where, if you have these certain risk factors for heart disease, it increases your risk for sudden cardiac death, which was, him and I see the opposite spectrum. My hope is to prevent that. Right. And he sees you if he sees you with a heart disease, it's not good. You do not want to see a pathologist with heart disease. And so, he talked about like a lot of these very, molecular mechanisms, like what leads to that medically. And then I talked about like, how can we prevent it? So basically a lot of it was, if somebody has high blood pressure and they're coming into your clinic, what type of exercise interventions do you provide for them? What does the American Heart Association recommend for activity? Sure. Your goal is, you're practicing lifestyle medicine. So your goal is to get them on a program where they can maintain some type of physical activity realistically to prevent that sliding scale from increasing. Right. And so that's what we talked about. And it was a very well-received talk. We had over 200 attendees at our virtual talk. And then I also gave a talk at the same conference with one of my other physician colleagues up at the University of North Dakota. He is a diabetes specialist. And we talked about pretty much the same thing, but with diabetes and interdisciplinary management of people with diabetes. So, what does the physician look for in people with diabetes? And, in the geriatric population specifically, because everyone, thinks that your A1C has to be like exactly 6.5. Right. And if it's not there, then, you're not doing a good job. And with some of these patients, based off of their age and how long they've had
other
diabetes,
comorbidities,
other things that are going on, you might be happy with an 8.
Sure.
As their A1C. And then how you as a physical therapist, we as rehabilitation professionals for this, the group of people I was presenting to, how can we utilize exercise to help them achieve these goals that their physicians have for them? And so, kind of the same type of talk.
That's awesome.
And we are presenting this talk at CSM virtually.
Oh, nice.
So, if you're interested in the older adult population and you treat a lot of people with we all treat people with chronic disease. And you have patients with diabetes, which, we all have patients with diabetes that come in. It's a very good talk on how to really understand the medical management of these patients and to also help people achieve their goals. Because a lot of people with chronic disease, I think that feel, based on our research and conversations with these patients, they feel really shameful when they don't achieve the goals that their doctors have for them. And that's never should be our intention, right? Our intention is always to empower people so that they can live these healthy lives, so that they can realistically accomplish certain goals. And so that's kind of what this talks about.
Awesome.
So that's kind of now taking us up here to PPS.
Yeah.
I'm at my last PPS conference as nominating committee chair. And then January we'll come with CSM, and then I don't know. We'll see what happens after that.
Goes from there. Well, Steph, I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for catching up with us and letting us know everything you've done. Where can people find you or follow up with you if they have questions or want to know what you're up to these days?
Yeah, so you can find me on social media. I'm at the Steph21 on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram, same thing, at the Steph. You can friend me on Facebook. I'm always open to chatting about these things, and always looking to hear other perspectives. And if you're interested in becoming involved or you want to develop your leadership skills for the profession, come talk to me. I would love to help you find a place and a home in APTA.
Yep.
And
hopefully we'll see you back on the HET podcast at some point.
And that is definitely my goal. Hopefully you'll be hearing my voice more often.
Thanks so much, Steph.
Thanks, Scott.
Access to healthcare is one of the largest issues facing both providers and patients, as millions of people worldwide lack timely and affordable access to healthcare. Anywhere Healthcare, a telehealth platform, is a simple, low-cost option for providers and patients that eliminates the barriers to access to all kinds of healthcare. To find out more, check out anywhere.healthcare, which is available in our show notes. And if you use the code HET in all caps when you email to sign up, you'll save 25% off the total cost. Thank you for attending class today, and we hope that you learned something and gained value from the content.
If you'd like to schedule office hours with us, feel free to add us on Twitter at HET Podcast, on Instagram, HET Podcast, on Facebook, the Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast, and the homepage, healthcareeducationtransformationpodcast.com.
And for those of you following along in the syllabus, extra credit can be obtained by liking us, sharing us, and leaving a review.
Let's continue our journey up Mount Educational Success as lifelong learners.